As the last of the wagons in the caravan rolls through the open gate into the town of Highmount in the dusk right before full nightfall, Wiglaf halts beside the gate, standing across from the Iron Warden, who holds a spear and guards the entrance to the town. They look at each other in the gathering gloom, and Wiglaf prepares to ask questions of this Iron Warden. He starts to open his mouth, and the warden says, Are you the one from Redhall? The one who saved the people of this town?" And Wiglaf starts to smile and says, "Why, yes, I am. How did you know?" And the warden glances at the dog, Griff, who is sort of panting and standing in the snow next to Wiglaf, and he sneers and he says, "I thought so. What are you doing here?" This throws Wiglaf off because he was expecting to receive a hero's welcome, and this warden seems angry at him. Why? Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is Ironsworn, Antarctica. We are with our character Wiglaf, and in the last session I made a little bit of a mistake, so I'll mention that as we get to the end. But in the last session, Wiglaf had found himself with a dead iron priest at an iron pillar that had been desecrated and defaced, and he decided to get the heck out of there while the getting was good, and he was able to undertake a journey. And when he reached his next waypoint, he found a caravan of 5 wooden carts that were fleeing Duskmoor. These are farmers from the outlying areas around Duskmoor who just did not want to be part of Kova's army and be part of his reckless warmongering, so they fled to Highmount. And on the way, they had gotten blocked by an avalanche. So after camping that night, and after asking questions of Ada, who's the leader of this caravan, and finding out some more about Angus, see last session for details, they got through the avalanche. They dug their way through, and here's where I made a mistake. I forgot, after watching the video again, which I do to make these outlines, when we made camp, we got a weak hit, and we took +1 on the next move. And then when I did the next move, I got a 7 instead of an 8 against something like a 7 and a 5. So I recorded it as a weak hit, but it should have been a strong hit. I should have gotten an 8. So I've reset the supply back to 4 because what we took as our penalty for the weak hit was a -1 supply. Dropped it to 3. I put it back up to 4 because we want to play the game correctly. We then reached our destination, having got through the avalanche to the town of Highmount. Now, before starting, I then generated an NPC, and the reason this NPC is hostile is because the oracles told me so. The Iron Warden is named Merrick, and I rolled up that you roll 2 goals. He has 2 goals: to undermine a relationship. I thought, what's that? And find redemption. Then I rolled up that he's hostile, and he is driven and remorseful, and his activity is constructing. So I guess he's constructing a way to find redemption. And what I decided is that Merrick was a warden posted to Highmount, and when Kova's raiders came, and they didn't go into the walls, but they took the people from the outlying farms, Merrick hid inside the town walls and didn't go out and try to fight back. The town people they saw this, and they were kind of scornful of his cowardice, and now he's remorseful over what he did and driven to find redemption and prove himself worthy of being an Iron Warden. He's hostile toward Wiglaf because the 8 prisoners Wiglaf freed have now returned, singing his praises and calling him a hero. And Merrick is now embarrassed that this guy went all by himself into the entire fortress of Duskmoor, not just against a few raiders, and rescued all these people and got them out. And so the relationship he seeks to undermine is the bond that Wiglaf has forged with the people of Highmount for saving the prisoners. He wants to maybe embarrass Wiglaf or in some way get them to not be bonded to Wiglaf. So one of the things that I'm going to do here is Wiglaf wants to kind of gather information from this guy and doesn't know why he's hostile. So I think what we're going to do is when I go to roll the gather information, I'm not going to give him the +1 for the bond, because although we have a bond with the community, we're not actually inside the walls yet, and we're trying to make a bond with somebody who's mad, and doesn't kind of recognize the bond of this community. So as a GM, I'm going to put my GM cap on and say that we don't get the +1 for having a bond. So Wiglaf looks at Merrick a little bit kind of sideways and says, I'm not sure what your problem is, but I just helped this caravan get in from the snow. Oh, yes, yes, Merrick says. You're so helpful. Aren't you Wiglaf, the guy who murdered his own friend? And Wiglaf says, I never murdered anyone. Oh, yes, yes, now you're very helpful. What is it that you want? Why are you here? Why did you even find this caravan on the road? Shouldn't you be in Redhall or Longhaven wintering out? Why are you on the road? And Wiglaf says, well, actually, I learned some things when I was in Duskmoor. Oh, you learned things, says Merrick, and he sneers at him. And now sensing the issue, Griff kind of growls, and Wiglaf says, yes, I learned that there's a death cult in Duskmoor, and I'm trying to find out more about it, and I would like to talk to the people who I rescued from Duskmoor and see if they have some more information. And I was also kind of hoping to talk to you or the other wardens around here. I'm the only warden right now, says Merrick. Oh, says Wiglaf. Well, I was kind of hoping to talk to you about the raiders and Kova and what's happening and see if I can get some help for that. And Merrick says, well, you're not going to get any help from me. And as a matter of fact, I think we're not even going to gather information here because Merrick isn't cooperative at all. And so Wiglaf says, well, look, I'm just going to head into the town. Can you tell me the name of the inn? Right? And Merrick says, you go and find the inn yourself. I have nothing more to say to you. So he's sort of resentful of Wiglaf, and Griff kind of growls, and they walk into the town. And Merrick just goes back to standing his post. Well, I'm not even going to do a gather information here because I feel like there's no way, right? I mean, if there was a way to like give disadvantage on the roll or penalties or something, we could, but I think that we're just not even going to gather information here. So Wiglaf enters into the town, and now we're going to need to generate the name of the inn. So I'm going to pause it here while I do that, and I'll bring you back when I've got the inn's name. So in the fading light, Wiglaf walks with Griff through the town, and they pass a bunch of homes and a couple of maybe shops and that sort of thing. And as they continue going through here, they find a 3-story structure, the tallest in the entire town, and there's a sign out front swinging in the breeze that he can just see in the flickering torchlight as people start lighting the torches on the road to, keep the darkness at bay during the night, called the Journeyman's Quest, which I got from rolling on the action and theme tables. I got Journey and Quest, and that's the name I come up with. So Wiglaf says, he looks down at Griff and he says, let's hope they take dogs. And he opens the door, he says, sit, and he makes Griff stay outside, and he opens the door and he goes on inside. And he finds that the inn is mostly empty right now. It's not quite dinner time. There's a smell of food and mutton cooking and some vegetables frying. And there's a sort of a pot-bellied man with a balding pate and a bit of a beard standing at the counter, and he nods and says, welcome to the Journeyman's Quest. What can I do for you? And Wiglaf says, well, my name is Wiglaf, and I would like a room, but I have a dog, and I wondered whether you'd be willing to take the dog. So now let's find out something about this guy and see if he's friendly or not. So his goal is going to be to 71 to advance his status. So I guess that means he wants to get rich. Maybe he wants to run for mayor or something. Well, I don't know if we really need to know that yet. His disposition, and this is going to determine whether we're going to be able to keep Griff here or not, is 20 cooperative. So he says, yes, you can keep your dog here as long as you keep him out of the common room. You can bring him up to your room and leave him in there. He won't mess on the floor or anything, Billy. And Wiglaf says, no, Griff's very, very well trained. So he is cooperative. And now let's describe him. And we're going to roll, let's do twice. He is, wow, I'm rolling a lot of 90s. 96, greedy, and 26. He is greedy and ambitious, which works really well together. you're going to pay for this, right? He says. And Wiglaf says, well, yes, I have a few coins. And actually, let's see. Does he have some coins? There's a move. It's supposed to be for delve, but we can check our gear to see if we have a specific or helpful item. We can roll plus supply and see if we've got it. So let's see. He says, can you pay? And Wiglaf rolls a 4 on the action die plus 4 supply against a 3 and a 5, so it's a strong hit. We got 8 versus 3 and a 5. So he says, yes, I have a few coins, and he takes out some copper and he puts them. Is that enough? And this is a cooperative guy, so he immediately scoops up the copper and it goes into his pouch, and he says, yes, that's enough. And we take a momentum, so we go up to 5 momentum, which isn't bad. And Wiglaf then says, let's see, what's he doing right now besides tending the inn? He is 35. Tracking. I don't know who he's tracking yet. Not sure. And he is in High Mount. So Cormac says, yeah, you've got enough coins here, so you can take the dog up to your room when you're ready. And I'll even have the chef throw in some cuttings from the fat and stuff from the mutton that we're not going to serve. I'll give him the scraps. And Wiglaf says thanks, and he gives him another copper or 2. And he says, bring me a meal with some bread and some mutton and some cheese and some veggies. And so Cormac says, well, certainly. And he opens the door and he shouts back to the chef to tell the chef to prepare one of the meals. And then he comes back out and he says, so you're not from around here. What brings you here? And Wiglaf says, well, I'm Wiglaf, and I came from Red Hall. And the reason I came here is because I helped some people in Duskmoor who were captured by Duskmoor get out, and I was hoping to check up on them, and I have some questions I want to follow up. And actually, I would like to talk to you as well. Do you know anything about what's going on, in particular about these raids, and why Duskmoor is doing all of this? So he's an innkeeper. He might know something. Let's see what happens. I assume he has heard of this, right? We have a bond with his community. So he says, oh, you're the one who helped. And he's cooperative, right? You're the one who helped. A couple of my friends were part of that group that you helped escape from Duskmoor, and they just sang your praises. So I'm very pleased to meet you. And he says, yeah, what can I do? What can I tell you? And Wiglaf says, well, tell me about the raids. Like, how did they get captured? Did this happen? Did they come in the middle of the night? Of course, it's been night for a couple of months, but did they come during midnight? Did they come when it was sort of twilight out? How many of them came? What's the story? How were they armed? Was Kova with them? So he starts asking a whole bunch of questions and interrogating. And so now we're going to gather information. And we share a bond with this community, so we do +1. So we're rolling at +3 because we have +2 for our wits. And again, Griff isn't going to help us because Griff only helps gather information when he's like sniffing around being a bloodhound. So we roll a 3 on the action die, +3 is 6 against a 3 and a 2, so we get a strong hit. So that means we're going to discover something helpful and specific. And we take +2 momentum, which is great. I love getting momentum. And we're up to +7 now, which is pretty nice. That means we can zero out anything below a 7. I always like getting it up to 8, 9, because then oftentimes you can at least turn a miss into a weak hit. So we're going to get specific actionable information. And I think, so let's ask the Oracle. I think that it's far more likely that that this innkeeper is going to have information about Kova rather than the death cult. He hasn't been in Duskmoor. And the people from Duskmoor probably didn't give a lot of details about the death cult. So I think this particular guy isn't really going to have a lot of information about the death cult, but he might have some information about the raiders and about Kova. He can give them numbers. He can talk about whether they were mounted and that sort of thing. He was looking over the wall maybe, and maybe he's one of the members of the town militia that, like, in emergencies, and he was standing on the wall with a bow and arrow in case they came in and trying to take shots at them, and something like that. So I'm going to say it's likely that, in fact, I'm going to say it's almost certain that the information he has is about Kova. And we get a 41. So yes, his information is about Kova. So he says, well, I don't know anything directly about Duskmoor, but I was standing on the wall on the west side of town, opposite the gate, and I was trying to shoot my bow and arrow at these raiders, but they were off in the middle of the night in the distance, and it was really hard to see, so I don't think I hit anybody. But he describes we were attacked by, it wasn't that many. There were maybe a dozen of them, and they were on horseback, and they had some kind of armor. Let's see, did they have leather armor or chainmail or hides? So let's start with the weakest is hides. So I think it's likely that they had better armor than hides. So did they have better armor than hides? 41, yes. 46 rather, yes. So do they have better armor than leather? I'm going to say that's unlikely. But 97 they did. So they had chain. Did they have better armor than chain? I'm going to say a small chance. We get a 51. So they had, no, he says, I think they had chainmail armor. That's what I could see in the torchlight. It glinted off the metal, and they had axes as weapons. We've already established that from having interacted with them before. And they were mounted on horseback, and even the horses had some kind of barding or leather armor on them, so the arrows just bounced off the few that I was able to get in range. And they burned down a couple of barns, and they stole people from the farms to the west. And, we have that Iron Warden out there, and that Warden, Merrick, he didn't do any good. He just stayed inside. Like, we were trying to shoot bows and arrows. He didn't even do that. He didn't take his spear and go out there and fight them the way he's supposed to. And Wiglaf said, well, yeah, he's just one guy. And Cormac says, well, you're just one guy. And you went all the way into Duskmoor, into the middle of the bad guys' den, and you rescued these people out. I mean, is he an Iron Warden or not? He's sworn to protect and defend these people. He swore an iron vow to give his life to defend these people, and he forsook his vow. So, and Wiglaf says, oh, when he scratches his head and says, I guess that's why he was pretty hostile to me when I came in, and he found out who I was. And Cormac says, yeah, he wouldn't be too friendly toward you because, we've been pretty scornful of him in this town since he was hiding while even the regular townsfolk were up, standing at the wall trying to shoot arrows at the bad guys. And two of the people were shot and wounded, and they're off in the chirurgeon's hospital being healed right now. And meanwhile, our Iron Warden was hiding in his house. And so we've gotten some specific information, and I think we've reached a milestone, right? Because we now have learned something about the weapons and armament of the troops. And so we're going to mark 1 progress because it's a formidable quest on stopping Kova's reckless warmongering. And there we go. And as you notice, I make the prettier marks in the boxes off screen so you guys don't have to wait for me to do that. So Wiglaf says, all right, well, thank you for the information. Can you bring me my dinner now? And he says, give me the key to my room. I'll bring the dog up. And so while he's waiting for his dinner to be served, he brings Griff up. And when he comes down, they bring him his meal, and the chef also brings him a small bowl of scraps for Griff to be fed. And Wiglaf has a nice meal, and he's going to sort of rest and recover. And I guess we may as well make a sojourn here because we can take some extra supply, and we can take some momentum. And we could envision what the community needs, swear an iron vow, and add +1, but I don't think it makes any sense to do that because we already have 2 iron vows. Both of them are related to this community. So we have a bond. That means we get to roll at +1 and +4 for the heart, so +5. So hopefully this will be a good roll. And we get a 1 on our action die, +5 is 6, but we get 5 and 2 on our challenge dice, so we get a strong hit. And that means that we can choose 2. So we're going to, and our companions can do it as well, right? So it says, you and your allies may each choose a hit. And I believe your companions do as well. So, I'd really like to take the momentum. But Griff needs health, and we need supply. And I could push the roll and roll again, but I don't want to do that. I think I'm going to stay at +4 supply. I'm going to give Griff the health, and I'm going to take the 2 momentum because I love momentum. And that gives us to 9 momentum, which means if we're doing something dangerous, we'll be in pretty good shape. And now we go to our assets and we move. Oh, Griff's health is already 4. Okay, so he must have healed up in the previous. So I'm going to take 2 momentum and the supply then. All right, so there we go. So we're full supply, full health, full spirit, and almost maxed out momentum. All the 9s and 10s can beat us anymore, guys. The only way we can get a miss now, if we in a critical time, is 2 9s or a 9 and a 10 or 2 10s. Okay, so morning comes. It's sort of nautical twilight in the morning, and then starting to head towards civil twilight. It's getting a little bit brighter. If we look at our world and go to the light regime, you can see that we're at the end of. I'm going to go ahead and move this down to the end of August so we can see what it's like. And you can see that we get daylight from about 11 in the morning till about 4 in the afternoon. Now they're getting about 4 or 5 hours of daylight. So it's almost like the deepest, darkest winter where I live, or in sort of, the mid-Atlantic states of the U.S., where we, it's not quite this bad, but by mid-September he'll be experiencing the kind of light regime we get on the 21st of December where I live. So now we've woken up, we've sojourned, he's feeling a lot better, and now he wants to wander around Highmount and see if he can locate the people who he helped, and see if he can find some more information. And he's also maybe going to see if he can find an iron priest. And so we're going to gather information again. And so we're going to make this move. You're not supposed to make the same move twice in a row, but we did a sojourn in between. So now we're going to gather information. And Wiglaf is going to ask around and see if he can find the people who had been prisoners. And then if he can, on a strong hit, he'll find them and get some information from them. And so, where is it? Gather information. So he's going to look around the town, and he's going to ask directions and see if he can find these people. And then he's going to ask them questions. So how do we do this? Should it be securing an advantage? I'm not sure if it should be securing an advantage or we should just ask. I think we should just ask the Oracle, actually. Is he going to be able to find these people? I would think yes. I would think it's very, very likely. So I would say it's almost certain he's going to be able to find some of these former prisoners to talk to. And we roll a 34. So yes, he is able to get a couple of them on the street, and he waves them down, and he says, "Oh, how are you doing? Oh, Wiglaf," they say, we're so glad to see you. And he says, "Look, I want to talk to you some more about what happened to you in Duskmore because I need some more information. What can you tell me?" And what he asked them about, the question is, should he ask them about the Death Worshippers, or should he ask them about Kova? I think he's going to ask them about Kova, right? I think he wants to know about the Death Worshippers, but let's assume that let's see. Actually, let's see. 50-50 chance, since there were 4 people who were being sacrificed and 4 people who were prisoners but not being sacrificed. The men were the prisoners that he found first. They didn't go into the temple, so they wouldn't know anything about the death cult. And the women were in the temple being ready to be sacrificed in children, and so they wouldn't probably know anything about the military side of things. So did he find the prisoner, the guys who were in the first long haul, or did he find the sacrificial victims? I'm going to say, did he find the sacrificial victims? 51 or greater, he did. We rolled 28. No, so he found the guys who were in the long haul, which means they wouldn't know anything about the death cult. So he's not going to ask about the death cult. He's going to ask about Kova's forces. And he's going to say, look, what did you see about Kova's forces? Are they... I didn't see a lot of them in the town. Are they based in the town a lot? Are they going out raiding a lot? How many of them are there? And he starts asking a bunch of questions to see if he can gauge the strength of Kova's forces and maybe where they might strike next. And so we're going to gather information. We're rolling at plus wits, which is 2, and 1 for the bond is plus 3. And so we get a 4 plus 3 is 7 against an 8 and a 1. So we get a weak hit. So the information complicates the quest or introduces a new danger. We envision what we discover or ask the Oracle, and then we take plus 1 momentum. So first, we go up to 10 momentum. It's maxed. So now anything that gives us an option to take momentum, we want to take a different option. And now we have to ask ourselves, so what do they tell us that complicates the quest? So let me pause and think about this, and I'll bring you back when I've had a bit of a think. All right, so I know what oracle I want to use to do this. It's a threat oracle. We're not actually using threats yet. I don't want to introduce that complexity yet until I've done a few quests and gotten used to things. I've played this game before, but it's been a while, and I'm kind of still getting my feet wet, and as you can tell, making some mistakes. Kova is a leader who wants to seize power. And so what I'm going to do is go to the oracle that's for a scheming leader, and I'm going to ask sort of what are they going to tell him about Kova. So let's roll on the oracle, and we get a 61, which is reveal a true intention. So they know what Kova's true intentions are. All right, so they say, look, they captured us, and they were trying to make us part of their army, but it wasn't just an army. It's a death cult. And although they told us that the goal was to, for him to capture territory and control us and make us part of his larger community, his fiefdom, the real truth is that they were planning to use all of us to power a death ritual, and they're going to kill everybody. They're not going to conquer. They're not going to lead. They're trying to kill everybody. And that's what he's really going to do. So I think that's going to actually be another tick. We've now reached another milestone. And so we now know there's a relationship between the death worshippers and Kova, and that he knows full well what's going on, and he's going to try and help them kill everybody. And Wiglaf knows that this could be to invoke some sort of maybe a ritual that they try to use to bring about the end of the Ironlands, just like they brought about the end of the old world, if that's in fact what truly happened, right? Wiglaf has heard these rumors, doesn't know for sure. So he thanks the men, and then he says, look, I have another question for you. I'm trying to find an Iron Priest. Is there an Iron Priest in this town? Now, I was going to give it somewhat of a chance, but I think because we found a dead one, there's a pretty high chance that the dead one was recently in this town. So I think that it's a small chance that there's an Iron Priest in Highmount. So let's see what they answer. We roll a 0-6, so no way. They say no. There isn't an Iron Priest in town right now. Now, was this Iron Priest that was up in the pass that was killed, was he had he come from here? I think that's likely. And we roll a 16, so he was not. So they said, there hasn't been an Iron Priest in these parts in months, not since before the sunset. So, we haven't seen an Iron Priest in a long time. What do you want to talk to them for? I mean, they're pretty weird, and they don't talk much, and they really don't acknowledge you unless you're worshiping the Iron Pillars, and gosh, we all stay away from those. So Wiglaf says, well, I had some questions because of this death cult. I thought maybe the Iron Priest knew something about it. And they say, oh, well, yeah, that might be, but still, they're pretty unusual, strange people, and we don't really want to talk to them much. And so that's what we've gotten from gathering our information. So now what we have to do is I'm going to have to think about what Wiglaf is going to do next. We've got a lot of momentum. We've got all our supply and health and everything, but we haven't made a lot of progress on these quests because they're both formidable. So I got to figure out where he's going to go next. Is he going to go back to Duskmoor? I feel like that might be something he might have to do. Or is he going to go back and reinspect that iron pillar? I think, in fact, he might go back and reinspect the iron pillar. And I'm not going to make it a journey. I'm just going to have him face danger to go back there. And I think that that'll be our last move of the session because we're at 30 minutes. And let's see if Wiglaf can get back to there. So the sun has risen and he's got the whole daylight and he knows that they've cleared the avalanche. So it doesn't take that long to get back there. So he's going to actually go back. It's going to take him 2 days. And so what we'll do is we'll face danger to get to where he camped the night before with the caravan. Then we'll camp, and then we'll face danger again. Or should we just go ahead and undertake a journey? If we're going to do that much, I think let's just do one face danger move. We're not going to make camp and do all of that nonsense. He's got all of his stats and everything. So Wiglaf is just going to head back, and it's going to take him 2 days. And we're going to see if anything untoward happens. So he's moving, I think, realistically, he's going to go fairly quickly. So he's going to move with speed. He takes Griff, and the two of them head back out into the mountains, and they're going to move in daylight hours and try to hunker down at night. And they're going to go fairly quickly so that in 2 days, they'll get back, hopefully, to the iron pillars. And so let's see what happens. So we're rolling at plus edge, and we don't get any other bonuses, so we're plus 3. And we get a 6 plus 3 is a 9. However, against a 9 and a 1, so it's a weak hit. We succeed, but at a cost. So I think what happens is it actually, on the way up, we get caught in a little bit of an avalanche, and that delays us a little bit, and we're going to suffer -1 momentum. So they're heading up, and where the avalanche was, the snow actually slid back down. And so when they get there, Wiglaf, without a shovel now because he's not a farmer, he doesn't have a spade, Wiglaf just using like the end of his spear and Griff digging around, it takes them like an extra whole day. So instead of getting back on the second day out, they get back on the third day out. It takes them a little bit, and he loses a little bit of momentum. And then because then we succeed, right? Troublesome cost. Yeah, it's not that troublesome. So we get back to where we were, where the iron pillar is, and I'm going to have to add that to the map at some point. We get back to where the iron pillar is, and we'll see what we find there next session. So we're back at the iron pillar, and we're going to conduct another investigation and see if we can figure out what happened. Maybe examine this iron priest, examine the pillar. It's been enough days now that if somebody were to come across us with the body, they wouldn't think I had killed it, because this body's been now out here for 5 or 6 days. It's probably starting to smell and decompose. It's rigor mortis and so on. It's clearly not a fresh kill. The blood has dried and maybe even been covered over by some new snow. And so, although it's under an overhang, it's probably not covered by snow, but it's dried up. It's clearly not a fresh kill. So now if somebody comes across us, they're not going to think that we killed them. And probably the murderer isn't going to be here unless the murderer lives in this area, which is certainly possible. But all of that will happen next time. So we've made a little bit of progress. We've got a couple of check marks on our Kova quest. And now we're still kind of in parallel and trying to investigate these death worshippers, because the two kind of go hand in hand and sort of work together. And so we'll see. At some points, we may start actually marking progress for both. And, now that I think about it, I think we also should mark a progress from the last thing we found out for both of these quests. And I'm going to check the rules, but I think you're allowed to do that when two quests sort of are going in the same direction. I'll clear that up next session if that's not the right thing to do. But I think we're making pretty good progress. And until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been Ironsworn, Antarctica.